thinking, how did this happen? Well, it's a long story.
For the 3 people who actually care about my little cinematic universe, no, teleportation by lightning is not one of my superpowers. That was just a fun thing for this review. Hey there guys, how are you? It's me, the Canadian Movie Buff, with a review of Thor Ragnarok. So things aren't going quite well for Thor. For one thing, Hela, the goddess of death, has escaped from a prison and broke his hammer. He's been cast out onto an unknown planet, there's a surprise, and now has to make his way back home before Asgard gets wiped out. Also, he has to fight the Hulk now if he ever wants to get off the planet and escape the Grandmaster. With each standalone trilogy of the MCU, there's always one that stands above the rest. For the Iron Man trilogy, it was Iron Man 1. For the Captain America trilogy, it was The Winter Soldier. Since this will be the last film in the Thor trilogy, and considering how nobody was particularly won over by the first 2, Marvel knew they had to do something really special to pull this one off. So they dug into Norse mythology and pulled out Ragnarok, the end of all things, and they turned it into a retro disco comedy. Much like Marvel's most recent projects, it has its moments and its problems. Thor Ragnarok suffers from the MCU's villain and sequel problems, and as well as the more recent problem of having too much humor, but that doesn't mean the movie itself isn't a good time. If there's one thing I can say about Marvel this year, it's that they're writing better villains. Right when Cate Blanchett appears on the screen, you know she means business. She enters through a black portal out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know about you, but that is one way to make an entrance. Right away, there was this creepy vibe around her that you knew that she was going to be worse than Loki. Not to mention that she's extremely powerful. After all, she did break Mjolnir. Also, the Hulk is back! Since Universal is pretty much barring Marvel Studios from making standalone movies, they need to use him every way they can. So it's refreshing to see him pop out outside of an Avengers movie. Now I sometimes can't help but wonder, what would the MCU be if Edward Norton was Bruce Banner? I liked how Jeff Goldblum handled the Grandmaster. Even though he's been using the same style of acting his entire career, it works with this character. He's the brother of Benicio del Toro's The Collector and runs a gladiator pit, so he has to have that sense of showmanship about him. Goldblum performs in his traditional Goldblum way, but that's what makes the character so great. If he played it up anymore, it would come across as cartoonish. Between the disco theme, the outlandish gladiator fights, and the demon monster, this movie had a little bit of that B-movie charm. You look at the demon guy, I forgot his name, you could tell that the CGI is a little bit unpolished, to say the least. The movie was so outlandish and weird that it was hard to take it seriously. And sometimes that worked, but other times it didn't. Thor is meant to be the fish out of water Avenger. He doesn't quite know how Earth works, how sarcasm works. He doesn't really understand our humor. But now he's been completely rewritten to be more hip and funny, as if to say, what Thor the Dark World? I don't know about no Thor the Dark World. That's the issue I've been having a lot with Marvel movies recently. Too much comedy. Don't be afraid to go dark, even if it gets you a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. I remember when Kevin Feige dissolved the Marvel Committee, he said it would give more creative freedom to the writers and directors of the MCU. I think by creative freedom, he meant cookie cutter. Because that's what Thor Ragnarok is. The disco theme, the overuse of humor, the outlandish plot, it's pretty much Guardians of the Galaxy in a different skin. The movie also had serious tone issues. It didn't know whether to make you laugh, cry, or be shocked. There's about a 3 or 4 minute scene with Odin, Thor, and Loki, and then Hela shows up. At first it's a touching moment, then there's a joke that's made, then Hela shows up. 4 minutes you're like, oh, that's so emotional. What? Also, may I remind you that this is pretty much the apocalypse of Thor's side of the MCU. That's it, the whole 9 realms deal, that's shut off. Done. Boom. Here's what I imagine the process must have been. Okay, it's Ragnarok, the end of all things, the apocalypse. Let's make it a light retro disco comedy with the Hulk. I don't know whether they came up with the title first or the concept first, but they shouldn't have named this movie Ragnarok. As we wrap up 2017, I think it's safe to say that Marvel didn't really bring their A game. Homecoming, Guardians 2, Ragnarok. It feels as if they become too self-aware of what makes their movies work. In a previous review, I mentioned that Marvel seems to be trying way too hard to be recognized as the franchise with the humor. It's for that reason why Warner Brothers ordered Suicide Squad to be recut to be more funny, and why Justice League will have a lighter tone. Marvel has such a monopoly on the superhero business that it forgets that they can go dark. Marvel, you don't need to keep all the dark stuff to Netflix. You can bring those into the movies too. Not gonna lie, I'm disappointed in the road the MCU seems to be walking down. If you take one thing away from my review, it's this. Comedy does not make a good superhero movie. It makes for a good comedy. What matters in a superhero movie are the characters and the plot and how the source material is handled. Wow, I've really been ripping on this movie. But for all intents and purposes, I enjoyed it for what it was. I liked how Jeff Goldblum handled the Grandmaster, even though it's the same type of acting he did for Independence Day 2. The Thor vs. Hulk fight was cool. Cate Blanchett made for a good villain. It had some awesome set pieces. And when set in the right tone, the comedy worked. It's not a bad way to spend a couple hours. And although it's not outstanding, you should definitely see it at least once in theaters. Maybe swing for IMAX. I'm really hoping Marvel pulls through with Black Panther. Otherwise, Infinity War better be the most dark and dreary movie yet. I'm talking about Batman v Superman levels of despair. Alright, that's my review of Thor Ragnarok. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Leave your answer by commenting down below. And as always, this is the Canadian Movie Buff saying, I hope you had a fantastic weekend at the movies. See ya!